What anger is needing, what you are needing, is to integrate your anger. Because anger is a part of you. And as uncomfortable and destructive as it can be at times, it is not only a part of you, but it has a necessary function. And I understand that this can be hard to swallow, that anger has a function, especially when your only experience of anger is one of violence and destruction. And of course, I'm not talking about integrating violence and destruction. The violence of anger is a distortion that happens when we split it off, when we exile anger, when we repress anger, when we fear anger. It distorts. And that's why it becomes violent. That's why it becomes destructive. And so actually, anger, in its purest function, is a function of protection. It's a function of healthy protest. As human beings, we need to be able to protest and essentially say no or stop when things don't feel right. When something is imposing on our personal space. Or when something feels violent and destructive. We need to be able to say no. We need to be able to claim our space and stand in that with strength and confidence. And so this actually is the pure intention of anger. And so to process anger, to allow anger, to reintegrate anger, means to uncover and honour and allow this pure intention. So you see, meeting anger is much more than just being with the felt experience of it, and much more than just allowing it. It's also this really coming into contact with that intention and allowing that intention to express itself. And right now, I'm just talking about your personal process. I'm not talking about expressing that in relationship, because that comes in ways which are empowered, embodied, respectful, when you allow it here. But when you allow that intention to express itself to you, essentially, it will always be some kind of no, or stop, or go away, or give me my space, or that doesn't feel right. I don't deserve this. And when you allow anger to communicate its pure intention in this way, you'll notice that the kind of violent, aggressive, destructive distortion of anger dissipates and is actually replaced by a full, rounded, embodied sense of self and presence. that gives way to natural strength and natural confidence in your relationships and in your capacity to say no, and to say no directly, and to set boundaries. And so it basically manifests as this honoring of your needs and your boundaries, of being able to sense them and honor them and communicate them. And so rather than thinking of anger as a thing, or just as an emotion, or just as a sensation, it makes more sense to think of it as a part of a process that's trying to complete itself. And at some point that anger was felt and there was a protest, but that protest was thwarted. It wasn't heard, it wasn't honored by other. And so you suppressed that protest as a way of protecting yourself from either violence or having love withdrawn from you, right? And that's when it distorts into anger. And that's when it gets lodged in the system as what we know as anger or rage. And anger or rage really has only two options to express. And both are through behavior, essentially. So one is when we externalize anger by blaming the other. And the other is when we internalize anger by shaming ourselves. So when we externalize anger, we act it out in violent and destructive ways. And when we internalize anger or act anger in, it turns into self-judgment, self-criticism, self-hatred. And so it's no wonder really why we have such a hard time with anger, why we judge anger, why we fear anger. And actually, when you notice that self-judgment or anxiety coming up, you can be sure that anger isn't very far away, because they act as protective mechanisms for something that feels like a threat. And so actually what we're learning is that, meeting anger, allowing anger, reintegrating anger isn't allowing the behavior of anger. It's allowing the pure intention of anger so that the pure energy of anger can be reintegrated. And of course, when anger is no longer split off and therefore distorting into violence and aggression, then you experience yourself more fully. That energy has been welcomed back into the whole and has returned to its natural state, which is your natural state. You will experience yourself more fully, more rounded, and more whole.